Joined live now by retired Major General David Fraser, CTV's military analyst and former commander of NATO forces in southern Afghanistan. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's talk a little bit about this ground operation. We've been expecting it for about a week now. What is the strategy behind waiting so long to actually begin?
Well, there's a couple of things why the Israelis are waiting. First of all, they're trying to get intelligence on where is Hamas, where are the now 203 hostages, and secondly is they're trying to also find out how are they going to attack in there, prepare their plans, rehearse their plans, and get their troops ready for the attack. And finally, and perhaps the most important thing they're doing, is they're giving time for the Palestinians to get out of the region so they're not attacking civilians, which would be a detrimental blow to their overall strategy. So it's about threefold why they're waiting. But now with the minister who has just announced that they're about to go in, this actual war is going to kick off in the next day or two.
Yeah, I mean, the rocket fire that, we've been seeing back and forth and some of the, what's been happening there, the collateral damage you're referring to, civilian deaths and injuries, as opposed to airstrikes. You can be much more precise on this, but there is, of course, Major General, the history of Hamas using, people effectively as human shields. How much more difficult does that make the operation?
Well, first of all, this is the hardest thing that a soldier can do is attack into a prepared defensive position, because Gaza is with all the buildings now that a lot of them have been rubbled, it actually favors Hamas. And for the Israeli Defense Force to go in there, it's the hardest thing that they're ever going to have to do. So that's number one. Number two is that Hamas will use the 203 hostages as human shields. They'll even use their own Palestinian civilians as shields. And for the Israeli soldiers trying to get to the bad guy and not kill or injure the non-combatants, it's the hardest thing that they're ever going to have to do. This will be as difficult as any operation, and unfortunately, there'll be an awful lot of Israeli soldiers who will fall in this fight.
I want to talk a little bit about this the U.S. vetoing the Security Council's resolution for a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons. You talk a lot about the civilian casualties in Gaza, this imminent ground invasion from Israel. If this potential ceasefire doesn't happen before that ground invasion, how much harder will it be for humanitarian aid to actually get into Gaza?
Well, I think we have to separate the political rhetoric about the ceasefire and the humanitarian aid, because the president of the United States has already arranged for humanitarian aid to get into Gaza through the southern border. And now it's just a matter of time when they can get that in. So that's being done. But that's not incumbent about having a ceasefire. The ceasefire is only going to benefit Hamas and actually drag this war out even longer. And for the Israelis, they will not agree to any ceasefire because they want to punish and destroy Hamas. The ceasefire will come after they are done with their ground campaign, and we are, weeks away from anything to be looking at a ceasefire.
And Major General, you just talked about that word punishment and that desire there from the Israelis to punish Hamas for what's happened here. But we also heard in President Joe Biden's remarks about the idea of restraint, considering how the American attitude was post 9/11 here. What did you make of those comments and how that may have an impact on whatever is to come?
Well, I thought the president's comments during that conference and also his address last night were one of the most measured, diplomatic things that he has done in office, because the Israelis are in a rage. They have been shamed. They have been surprised. They've had over 1,000 of their own people killed. They've got 203 people taken hostages. And what the president was saying is just hold off, just use restraint, don't use emotion to attack. And the fact that the Israelis have waited so long and have applied so much conditions on the attack by giving out 2 escape routes, by allowing people time to get out of the battle zone, I think the president and better minds have actually gotten involved here so that this doesn't turn into a bloodbath. But the president has been instrumental in keeping this war contained inside of Gaza, not having it squirt out everywhere.
Okay, interesting insight. That is retired Major General David Fraser joining us. He's CTV's military analyst. Appreciate the time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.